Have you ever wondered what happens when children forget their responsibilities towards their elderly parents? In a world where family bonds are becoming increasingly fragile, the heartbreaking story of Grandpa Zhou reveals the harsh reality faced by many older individuals. As he battles loneliness and seeks support from his children, his experience exposes a chilling truth about the generational divide. This video will not only uncover the emotional turmoil of one man's struggle, but also shed light on crucial lessons about family duty and the stark reality of aging. Stay tuned until the end to understand why this story matters and how it might change the way you view your family relationships. If you haven't yet subscribed, I highly recommend doing so and activating the notification bell to ensure you never miss a video. Your support means a lot to me as we continue to grow our community and reach more people with our content. If you enjoy the topic of this video, please leave a comment with the number 1. If it's not quite your cup of tea, drop a 0 in the comments. Your feedback is crucial in helping me create content that better serves you. Let's get started. There are moments in life that cut us to the core, moments that challenge our understanding of love, duty, and loyalty. Perhaps nothing is more painful for a parent than realizing that the very children they raised with endless love have grown cold and indifferent. This cruel twist of fate is something many parents face in their later years, and it's a harsh reminder that life doesn't always follow the path we hope it will. I find myself reflecting on this reality with a heavy heart, knowing that, at times, we are all capable of being heartless. And yet, the thought that children, the very ones who are supposed to carry on the legacy of love and care, could be the source of such heartache is almost unbearable. Parents pour their hearts and souls into raising their children. They spend sleepless nights tending to their needs, guide them through the challenges of growing up, and sacrifice so much to ensure their children have a better life. It's not just about providing food, shelter, and education. It's about nurturing them with love, teaching them right from wrong, and hoping that one day when the roles are reversed, their children will be there to offer the same care and support. This is the natural cycle of life, an unspoken contract between generations, a contract that has been honored for centuries. However, in today's world, something has changed. The chain of love and care that once connected parents and children has been severed by a generation that views their parents' sacrifices as nothing more than an obligation, rather than a gift. For many children, being raised by their parents feels like a right, something they are entitled to, rather than an act of love and devotion. When the time comes for them to give back, they feel no responsibility, no sense of duty. Instead, they believe it's their choice whether or not to care for their parents, as if the bond between parent and child is something that can be picked up or discarded at will. This sense of entitlement has shattered the very foundation of family ties, leaving many aging parents feeling abandoned and betrayed. These parents, who once dreamed of a peaceful and loving old age surrounded by the children they raised, now find themselves facing a harsh reality. In desperation, many turn to the only leverage they have left: their inheritance. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. They tell their children, "If you won't care for me now, don't expect to inherit anything later," but even this final plea falls on deaf ears. Many children today are bold enough to respond, "You can keep your property now, but after you're gone, it will still be ours." It's a cruel and heartless attitude, one that leaves parents feeling powerless and discarded, as if all their years of sacrifice and love mean nothing. This heart-wrenching situation is all too common, and it leaves one to wonder, is there truly no way for aging parents to reclaim their dignity and their legacy when faced with such unfilial children? Is there no recourse for them, no way to remind their children of the love and care they once received? Consider the story of 72-year-old Grandpa Zhou, a man whose heart was nearly shattered by the cold indifference of his children. Grandpa Zhou was a man of modest means, but he had worked hard all his life to build a comfortable future for himself and his family. He owned 2 properties worth millions, and in his later years he dreamed of spending his final days in the care of his beloved children. He envisioned a life where his children would take turns supporting him, offering him the same love and care that he had once given them. But when he approached them with this request, he was met with nothing but refusal. Despite his willingness to use his valuable properties as an incentive, his children remained unmoved. They had already made up their minds that after Grandpa Zhou passed away, the properties would become theirs, no matter what. It was as though they were waiting for him to die so they could claim their inheritance, without ever lifting a finger to care for the man who had provided them with everything they had. The cruelty of their attitude was devastating, and it left Grandpa Zhou feeling utterly betrayed. They wanted his wealth, but not the burden of caring for the aging father who had earned it. Unable to bear the heartache any longer, Grandpa Zhou decided to take matters into his own hands. He made a decision that was even more ruthless than anything his children had done, a decision that would change the course of their lives forever. In a moment of clarity and strength, he decided that he would not allow his children to inherit anything from him. He realized that his legacy was not something to be taken for granted, and he took steps to ensure that his children would never be able to benefit from the fortune they had so callously ignored. What Grandpa Zhou did next was a powerful reminder that even in the face of betrayal, a parent's love and legacy are not to be taken lightly. His decision forced his children to confront the reality of their actions, and it left them filled with regret. The inheritance they had so eagerly anticipated was no longer within their grasp, and they were left to reflect on the choices they had made. Grandpa Zhou's story is a testament to the strength and resilience of parents, even in the face of unimaginable heartache. It serves as a warning to those who believe that they can take their parents' love for granted, and a reminder that love, care, and family are far more valuable than any inheritance. I once believed that living in the city would guarantee me a comfortable and fulfilled life, and for the better part of my years, that belief held. The first half of my life was filled with happiness, shared moments, and the warmth of companionship. But as I grew older, the tide turned. I found myself standing on the precipice of loneliness, my once joyous existence transformed into a painful struggle of helplessness. 5 years ago, the world I knew crumbled around me when I lost the person who had stood by my side for half of my life. My partner, my confidant, my Rocky was suddenly taken from me by illness. It was so abrupt that I had no time to prepare for the void his absence would create. I remember that day vividly, as if it happened just yesterday. That morning, we had gone shopping together at the supermarket, just like we always did. We laughed over small things, talked about what we'd have for dinner, and even made plans to play mahjong at the neighbor's house later in the afternoon. Everything felt normal, like it always had. But by 3 p.m., that normalcy shattered. I woke up from my nap and went to his room to gently nudge him awake, expecting to see his familiar smile. Instead, I was met with the cold, heartbreaking reality that he had quietly passed away in his sleep. People often say that passing away in one's sleep is a blessing, a peaceful exit from this world without the agony of a long illness, without the burden of watching your loved ones suffer. It's supposed to be easier on everyone involved, both for the one who leaves and for those left behind. And at first I tried to see it that way too. I tried to convince myself that his departure, free from pain and suffering, was a small mercy. But that small comfort quickly faded, replaced by a grief that has weighed heavily on my heart ever since. The truth is, I never realized how much I depended on him until he was no longer there. For half a lifetime, I had grown accustomed to his care, his gentle presence guiding me through every aspect of our lives. He was the one who managed everything, raising our children, running the household, tending to our parents, and making sure the finances were in order. He handled it all with such grace and ease, allowing me to focus on my work. I never had to worry about the details because he was always there, making sure everything was taken care of. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. But now, with him gone, I find myself utterly alone. The person who had been my support, my comfort, my everything, is no longer here. I have been thrust into a world where I must navigate life's challenges on my own, forced to confront the day-to-day realities that I had once taken for granted. There is no one to share my burdens with, no one to celebrate small victories or offer solace in times of sorrow. I must face both joy and pain alone, with no one to lean on. This loneliness is a hollow ache that never truly goes away. It seeps into every corner of my life, reminding me that I am now a solitary figure in a world that once felt so full. The silence in the house, once peaceful, now feels suffocating. The simple tasks that we used to do together, cooking, cleaning, even watching television, now feel like insurmountable challenges when done alone. I miss his presence in ways I never imagined I would, from the sound of his voice to the way he would reach out to hold my hand during quiet moments. Every day I am reminded of how much he meant to me and how much I relied on him. And with that reminder comes the bitter truth that I must now forge ahead without him. It is a journey I never expected to take, and one that I feel utterly unprepared for. I used to think that growing old together would be a peaceful transition, a time for reflection and rest. Instead, I am faced with the harsh reality of growing old alone, without a partner who made life worth living. In the wake of his passing, I have come to understand that the greatest loss is not just the absence of the person you loved, but the absence of the life you built together. And that is a loss that no amount of time can ever truly heal. My 2 children have achieved remarkable success in their lives, both professionally and personally. In another world, I might have thought that their accomplishments would bring us closer, allowing me to lean on them in my old age. Yet the reality is far from that ideal. My eldest son, now 50, works alongside his wife in a private company. They have a good life, with a comfortable income that affords them the luxuries they've worked hard for. My daughter, just 3 years younger than her brother, also has a stable life. She works in a leisure position that promises a substantial pension upon retirement. Both of them built their families early, securing their futures with successful careers and the promise of stability. I should be content, and in many ways I am. After all, they have given me grandsons, the future of our lineage. For a parent, this is no small joy, the knowledge that the family will continue through another generation. Even though they each have only one child, I felt a deep sense of pride and comfort, knowing that neither family line would come to an end. Yet, despite all their success, something precious has been lost between us. As their fortunes grew, so did the distance between us. There was a time when they needed us, when our presence in their lives was not only welcomed but necessary. When they first got married and began their families, they looked to us for support. We were there to help raise our grandsons and to provide for them during the difficult early years. Back then, they showed their gratitude with warmth and affection. They were diligent in their visits, always making time to come home and spend time with us. We were an integral part of their lives, trusted with their children, who stayed with us during school vacations and brought us immeasurable joy. But as time passed, things began to change. The grandsons grew up, busy with their studies and their own lives. Their visits became less frequent, and the once bustling home turned quiet. My children's lives improved with their success, and they found themselves pursuing different interests, ones that didn't involve their aging parents. They began to seek the freedom that comes with financial security, exploring the world on their terms. Gradually, they drifted away from us, caught up in their own lives. The phone calls became fewer, and the visits even rarer. Now, they only return when something goes wrong or when they need something from us. I can't help but feel a deep sadness over this growing distance. It's as if we become an afterthought, a relic of a time when they still needed our help. Their indifference is like a sharp, invisible wound unseen by others but felt deeply by me. In their pursuit of their happiness, they seem to have forgotten the bond we once shared. I can't help but wonder how we ended up here, in this space where the love and care that once connected us has faded into something distant and formal. There was a time when I believed that success would bring our family closer, and that the fruits of their hard work would lead to a future where we could all enjoy life together. But now, as I look back, I see that it wasn't the success that brought us together, it was needed. and now that their need for us has faded, so has the warmth of their affection. I'm left with the quiet realization that, despite all we did to help them succeed, we are no longer a priority in their lives. This isn't the future I imagined, and it's a painful adjustment. I had always thought that growing old would mean being surrounded by family, enjoying the fruits of a life well lived, and watching my children and grandchildren flourish. Instead, I find myself alone with my memories, wondering where it all went wrong. My partner and I used to sit together, sharing our frustrations about the growing indifference of our children. We would talk late into the night, trying to make sense of how, after moving into their new homes, our children seemed to have forgotten about the home where they had been raised. It was as if the warmth of our family had been replaced by the allure of youthful pursuits, social gatherings, career advancements, and the excitement of new experiences. Slowly but surely, our once bustling home grew quieter, and the laughter and conversations that used to fill the air became distant memories. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment on number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. At first, it was difficult to accept this change. We were used to the closeness, to the idea that family meant always being there for each other through thick and thin. But as time passed, we began to realize that this wasn't just our reality. All around us, our old friends were going through the same thing. Their children, too, were caught up in their own lives, and their visits grew less frequent. In a way, this shared experience softened the blow for us. We came to understand that this was just the way things were now, a natural progression of life. We stopped reaching out as often, not wanting to impose or disturb their busy lives. If something happened, we learned to handle it on our own, relying on each other for support. Yet, despite this growing distance, my partner couldn't sit still. He was never one to let things be, and even though he felt the sting of their indifference, he refused to let it define our relationship with them. Every month, after receiving his pension, he would eagerly head to the market, picking out the best foods and special treats to take to our children's homes. It was his way of staying connected, of reminding them that we were still here, thinking of them, caring for them, even if they didn't need us in the same way they once did. But as time went on, I noticed a change. In the beginning, the children welcomed these visits with open arms, smiling and expressing their gratitude for the gifts we brought. They were happy to see us, and we felt a sense of purpose in those moments as if we were still part of their lives. But slowly, that enthusiasm faded. Our visits seemed to become an inconvenience to them, something they had to endure rather than enjoy. They began to look at us as if we were intruding, and the gifts we brought, once appreciated, were now received with polite disinterest. I'll never forget the day my daughter-in-law, with a forced smile, said, "Mom, you don't need to keep bringing us these things. We can buy them ourselves. They're available everywhere. You should save your pension for yourself." Her words, though carefully chosen, stung deeply. It wasn't just what she said, but how she said it, the subtle implication that our efforts were unnecessary, that our presence was more of a burden than a blessing. I knew she didn't mean to be unkind, and I understood that the relationship between a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law was often fraught with unspoken tensions. Still, it hurt to see how our once close bond had frayed over time. My daughter, too, seemed to have drifted away. After getting married, she became more absorbed in her husband's family, her priorities shifting as she built a new life with him. When we visited her, it was as if we were stepping into someone else's home. Her responses were cordial but distant, and the warmth we had once shared seemed to have evaporated. Like her brother and sister-in-law, she began to avoid our visits, making excuses and subtly signaling that our presence wasn't as welcome as it used to be. After several attempts to stay connected, we finally began to pull back. We saw the way they reacted when we came around, the way their faces tensed ever so slightly, and we didn't want to force ourselves into their lives where we no longer fit. It was a painful realization, but we accepted it as gracefully as we could. My partner, though still restless, eventually stopped making his monthly trips with gifts in hand. We had done all we could, but it seemed that in the pursuit of their happiness, our children had outgrown us. They no longer needed us in the way we had hoped they would, and we were left to navigate the empty spaces they left behind, clinging to the memories of what once was. This shift in our relationship with them was hard to bear, a reminder that the bonds we thought were unbreakable could weaken over time. We had always believed that family would remain a constant, that no matter how much life changed, we would still be there for each other. But now, as I sit in this quiet house, I realize that nothing is guaranteed. The love and connection we shared were precious, but they were not immune to the passage of time. And while we still love our children deeply, we have had to learn to love them from a distance, accepting that the closeness we once had may never return. As time went on, my partner and I came to an uncomfortable truth as we grew older. It was almost inevitable that our children would begin to see us differently. The affection and care they once showed us had slowly faded into a kind of detached indifference. We started to pull back, not wanting to impose ourselves on their lives any longer. Yet despite this growing distance, we never stopped supporting them. In the past, we had been there at every crucial moment, helping to raise their children, contribute to the down payment for their homes, and even assist with buying cars. We were always there, ready to lend a hand. Now that they were more financially stable, we shifted our focus to our grandchildren, continuing to find ways to help them, even though our presence in our children's lives seemed less important. Looking back, I realized that we may have been too generous, perhaps even a bit indulgent. 10 years ago, to motivate our grandsons, we made a significant promise. We decided to take one of the 2 properties we owned and pledged it to whichever grandson married first. These 2 properties, although a bit aged, were bought in the city center over 2 decades ago and had appreciated tremendously. At the time, the idea of inheriting a city property was something the children cared deeply about. But since the grandsons were still in school, there was no immediate rush. They were content to let the promise linger in the background while they focused on their education. But after my partner passed away, everything changed. By then, both grandsons had already graduated from university, and the children's casual interest in the property quickly turned into anxiety. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment number 4 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Suddenly, the urgency to secure that house became a pressing matter, and the children started to encourage their sons to find marriage partners as soon as possible. I found myself in a new and unsettling position, a widower living alone, with little more than the hope that my children's renewed interest in the house could somehow be used to persuade them to take me in for my remaining years. Last year, during the Spring Festival, we were fortunate enough to have the whole family gathered together for a rare reunion. It was during this time that I decided to broach the subject of my future care. I proposed what I thought was a reasonable idea, that I could take turns living with each of my children. I made it clear that I didn't expect them to wait on me or serve me in any way. In fact, I even offered to help them out as much as I could. I thought this arrangement would benefit everyone, allowing us to rekindle some of the closeness we once shared, while also easing the burden of my old age. But to my dismay, their reactions were far from what I had hoped. My son, the eldest, didn't hesitate to dismiss the idea. "Dad, you're living just fine on your own. Why would you want to squeeze in with us?" His words were sharp and direct, cutting through any illusion I had that they might welcome me into their homes. I looked to my daughter for some sign of support, but she avoided the topic altogether. Instead, she quickly shifted the conversation, steering it toward a subject that had become increasingly pressing in recent months: her son, Aiming. "Dad," she said, "Aiming is already 25 years old, and he has a girlfriend. He's planning to get married within the next 2 years. Can the house be transferred to him?" Her words hit me like a stone, cold and calculated, with no acknowledgement of the emotional plea I had just made. I had opened my heart to them, hoping for a solution that would keep me from facing my old age alone, but instead, the focus was on the house, on what I could still give them. My daughter's casual mention of the house sparked an immediate argument with my daughter-in-law, who jumped in with her concerns. "Dad," she interjected, "our son has a partner too. We also need that house." Suddenly, the room was filled with tension, and I found myself at the center of a dispute I never wanted to witness. My children, who once relied on me for everything, were now so focused on securing their futures that they barely considered my well-being. The property, which I had hoped would be a blessing to them, had become a source of conflict, a reminder that even in my old age, I was seen as more of an asset than a person who still had needs and desires. They didn't seem to understand that all I wanted was a place to belong, a place where I could feel valued and cared for in the final chapter of my life. At that moment, I realized just how far we had drifted from the family we once were. My children's eagerness to claim the house, their disregard for my suggestion of living with them, and their focus on material wealth over emotional connection all pointed to a painful truth. The bond that had once held us together had frayed beyond repair, and I was left standing in the ruins of a relationship I no longer recognized. The house that had once represented hope for the future now felt like a burden, a symbol of everything that had gone wrong between us. Just like that, the conversation I had hoped would focus on my future care effortlessly shifted into a discussion about who would get the house. My heart sank as I realized how quickly they had turned the topic from my needs to their desires. I tried to regain control of the conversation, though my voice trembled with a mixture of sadness and frustration. "If both grandsons are planning to get married," I said weakly, "and we divide the two houses between them, where will I live? Will I live with you or with you?" I pointed first to my son and then to my daughter, hoping they would recognize the weight of my question. But it was my daughter-in-law who responded first. Her words were as sharp as they were dismissive, though cloaked in a thin veil of concern. "Dad, we've already discussed this," she began, her tone firm. "You're getting older now, and for your well-being, it would be best for you to go to a nursing home. In the city, there are some excellent ones. Many top leaders even stay there. The caregivers are professionals, and they have all the amenities you enjoy. They even have mahjong, your favorite. You'll be much happier there." My son and daughter quickly jumped on the bandwagon, nodding in agreement as if they had rehearsed this conversation beforehand. "Yes, yes, Dad," my daughter added. "We'll visit you often, and you can still come home for the holidays. It'll be just like living with us, only with better care." Their voices were filled with false cheerfulness, painting the nursing home as some sort of paradise where I could live out my days in comfort and joy. But I wasn't convinced. The image they were trying to sell me felt hollow, like a cheap consolation prize for a lifetime of love and sacrifice. I looked at them, trying to make them understand. "I just want to live with you," I said quietly, my voice filled with a longing I could no longer hide. "I'm old, and I want to enjoy the blessings of my children. Isn't that what life is supposed to be about in these later years?" The room fell silent. My words, though simple, seemed to hang in the air, heavy with emotion. My children's faces went blank, and the atmosphere that had once been festive and full of laughter grew tense. And that New Year's dinner, which should have been a time of celebration and family, quietly ended without another word spoken. The warmth of the evening had been replaced by a coldness I didn't know how to penetrate. After the holiday passed, I reached out to them again, hoping to find a solution that would work for everyone. I told them that whoever took care of me in my old age would be the first to receive the house. I thought this offer might rekindle some sense of responsibility or love, but what I didn't expect was their response. They accused me of being unreasonable and of putting too much pressure on them. They said I wasn't considering their feelings, that I had better options for my care, but was stubbornly insisting on adding to their burdens. Their words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had raised them, cared for them, sacrificed for them, and now, in my time of need, they were telling me I was too much of a burden. "You're being overbearing, Dad," my son said bluntly. "It's not fair to expect us to take care of you when there are professionals who can do a better job." If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment on number 5 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. I felt my frustration rise, the hurt and betrayal boiling over. Overbearing, I retorted, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. I'm simply asking for what any parent would expect, that their children take care of them in their old age. Isn't that what raising children is for? I'm already in my 70s. And who knows when I might fall ill. Do you think it's too much to ask for a little support from the children I devoted my life to raising? The conversation ended there, with nothing resolved and the weight of our strained relationship hanging over me like a dark cloud. For the first time in my life, I felt truly alone, not just physically, but emotionally. The people I had counted on, the ones I thought would be there for me when I could no longer stand on my own, had made it clear that I was not their priority. And now, the promise of family, the idea that children would be there for their parents in their final years, seemed like nothing more than an illusion, one that had slipped through my fingers, leaving me grasping at the empty air. My words were harsh, and I meant them. I had reached a breaking point, and my frustration had boiled over into a confrontation I hadn't wanted but could no longer avoid. My anger was real, and I could see that my children were taken aback by its intensity. They seemed genuinely afraid that I might follow through on my threat to cut off their inheritance. In response, their attitudes softened quickly. They tried to reassure me, saying, "Dad, it's not that we don't want to take care of you. We have our own lives and our responsibilities. We have demanding jobs, and it's hard to find the time to be there for you like you want. But if it's really important to you, we'll find a way. Don't worry about the house, we'll help you manage it. You won't lose anything." Their words were meant to placate me, to ease the tension that had built up during our argument. But even as they spoke, I could sense the distance between us growing wider. Their reassurances felt hollow, a temporary fix to a much deeper problem. I could see that our relationship had been irreparably damaged by this conversation. After all that had been said, I couldn't shake the feeling that something essential had been lost. The closeness we once shared seemed like a distant memory, and their promises, though well-intentioned, didn't comfort me the way I had hoped they would. In the days that followed, my disappointment deepened. I realized that things would never return to the way they were. And so, in my quiet resolve, I made a decision. I put the 2 properties in the name of my children, securing the future of the houses, but I chose to keep them under my control. They wouldn't receive the properties immediately, and I decided that I would no longer give them any additional financial support. They may not have received the house just yet, but they wouldn't get another penny from me. I was done trying to buy their attention, done hoping that material offerings could bridge the gap that had grown between us. This experience, painful as it was, taught me a harsh truth about old age. Children, once the pillars of support we rely on, often become distant as they build their own lives. The idea that raising children guarantees security in old age, this concept that I had held onto for so long, turned out to be little more than a comforting illusion. When we were younger, we thought that our children would be our caretakers, our safety net when the world became too hard for us to manage on our own. But as I've come to understand, many children see their parents' property as a means to an end, a bargaining chip they can use to secure their futures. Yet, when it comes time to provide that care, to truly be there for their aging parents, their responses often fall short, marked by indifference or reluctance. The realization that my children may not be there for me when I need them most has been a bitter pill to swallow. And I know I'm not alone in this. Many elderly parents, who once believed that their children would be their lifelong support, find themselves facing a similar reality. They, too, are forced to turn to nursing homes for the care and attention they once expected from their flesh and blood. This is the inevitable truth of aging in today's world, and though it may provide some measure of peace, it comes at a great emotional cost. The heartlessness of children who fail to fulfill their role as caretakers leaves a deep scar in the hearts of their parents, a scar that may never fully heal. We grow up thinking that family is everything, and that the bonds we build will see us through life's darkest moments. But as I've learned, those bonds can weaken over time, and the love that once seemed unshakable can give way to indifference. It's a painful truth, but one that I've had no choice but to accept. And now, as I look ahead, I know that the peace I seek in my old age may not come from my children, but from within myself, or perhaps from the quiet solace of a nursing home, where I can finally find the care that I once thought only my family could provide. As we come to the end of this story, it's clear that aging is a journey filled with unexpected challenges, especially when it comes to family and the support we once took for granted. The tale of Grandpa Zhou's experiences highlights the emotional and practical struggles that many elderly face when the bonds with their children begin to fray. It's a sobering reminder that life doesn't always unfold the way we imagine, and sometimes the love and care we expect may come from places we never anticipated. Now, we want to hear from you. What have you learned from this story? How has it changed your perspective on family, aging, and the responsibilities we have toward our loved ones? Please share one thing you've learned and will bring into practice in your own life in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and found value in this story, please leave your comment below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more thought-provoking content. Thank you for watching.